You don't want to get divorced now, do you? You wouldn't know what to do without me. A stupid part-timer like you can't possibly even make any living at all. You'd be on your own. And what exactly do you expect to do if you go through with this? Just what I thought. Nothing. You're so stupid it's actually adorable. My darling, I can imagine you on your knees, begging for my forgiveness. I'm looking forward to coming home tonight, darling. I'll tell you that much.
My name is Mia. I'm 60 years old, and I'm a housewife. I've been married to my husband, Derek, for 35 years. He and I have worked for the same company a lifetime ago, and after a wonderful in-house romance, we got married. Derek is a proud man, and he has a stubborn side where he simply cannot accept that he's inferior in some way compared to other people. Or perhaps he does know, but refuses to acknowledge it in front of others. But I respected him for who he is all that time ago, and that's one of the multiple reasons I married him. Some of my colleagues were actually against the idea of me marrying him, but I didn't pay much heed to what they thought and decided to marry Derek because he was the only one for me. After that, we were blessed with a few children, and our family life couldn't have been any happier. When I had a child, he asked me if I could resign from my job and stay at home to take care of the kids and the house. I loved my job, so I felt a bit of resistance towards the concept of quitting my job. But one cannot be selfish when thinking about their family's future, and rationally, staying at home seemed to be the best thing to do, especially considering our children. So, after a short while, I quit my job and became a housewife. Because of this, I was able to watch my children grow up, and I was grateful to Derek for giving me such a precious opportunity. I have 2 sons, named Jared and Sky, and they are 1 year apart from each other. It only seems like yesterday when I beheld them both as but tiny babies, the most beautiful in the world. But now, both of them are all grown up. Both of them now work outside the region. Jared as a hardware engineer, Sky as a chef. Now that both of them spread their wings and left home, I was left alone with my own time, and I had way too much free time. I thought about finding some new hobbies, but I've always been clumsy with my hands. I'm too lazy to play sports. Then, I thought about applying for a part-time job. I remembered how much I like to work, and I began to think that a part-time job would be awesome, assuming Derek let me. I talked to him about it, and his response was,
I mean, by all means, go for it. But I have to warn you, if I find you neglecting the housework, I'll have you quit right away.
I'll do my best to make it work both ways, honey. My husband agreed to the idea. I've decided to take a part-time job at a supermarket as I continued on with the housework. It was hard at first, but as I got used to it, I was able to balance out the job and the housework pretty well. I was very satisfied with my first job in a long time. My life up until then had been wonderful, make no mistake, but as my expertise in my part-time job improved, I found that I was able to make better use of my time, and that filled me with a strong sense of satisfying accomplishment. But then, my husband's mood started to get worse with every passing day.
Goddamn prick. I'm so damn tired. Why the hell do I have to work for him of all frickin' people?
Anything wrong, honey?
You won't know what I'm talking about. Remember, I'm a full-time employee. You're a part-timer. Also known as someone who doesn't understand what real work is.
My husband is 58. Considering his personality, I always suppose seeing his peers and subordinates get promoted and accomplish more than him must be frustrating. My husband is a section chief, but at his age, he could have been a chief of department or sub-department, and yet, he still can't get ahead. I was sure there was a problem with his work that was underlying cause for the situation, but his pride forbade any rational thinking and always blamed it all on others, without others. When it was time for the company to announce who was going to be promoted, he complained every single time. Apparently, there's a young man about the same age as my firstborn who already has a higher position than him, but in a different department. According to one of his colleagues with whom I got acquainted always called Derek the eternal section chief, and I was sure my husband was aware of his admittedly befitting, albeit a little cruel nickname. Derek used to mutter angrily under his breath,
Youngsters these days only know how to make fun of other people, damn it. They're frickin' useless with literally everything else.
All I could ever do as he said these things was listen, and answer with nods and the countless utterance of the words, "Yes, honey." I'm sure he absolutely resented seeing people around him live more alive and happier than he, his wife, and children included. I don't think he could ever forgive anyone whose life is better than his. After a while, I've been able to establish quite a good reputation at my job, and I was really enjoying my life. It became so nice that I just had to tell both of my sons about it all, both of whom, let me remind you, were outside of my region. My two darlings seemed relieved to see me satisfied with my life. In retrospect, perhaps they were worried that living alone with their overbearing father would cause me some stress. I'm so glad that both of them grew up to be such kind angels, and I couldn't be more proud of them. Then, one day, one of the other part-timers at my job suddenly had to take a day off. I volunteered to fill in for them, and I went off to work on Derek's day off. Work was great as usual. When I came home, however...
I thought I told you not to slack off on the housework.
I'm sorry, honey.
'Cause of you, I missed lunch, damn it. I'm sorry is not gonna compensate for this. How could you do this?
You had, like, a cup of noodles or something in the cupboard, didn't you? You could have just eaten that.
You could have made lunch, is what I'm saying, damn it. You're supposed to frickin' sneak out during your lunch break, or whatever. Come home and cook me lunch, huh? That's normal.
No, that's crazy. There's no way I could do that.
You're a part-timer. You're supposed to be flexible. Part-timers have no responsibilities, and the only requirement is for you to just be there.
That may be true, but...
No one expects you to do anything worthwhile. You're just there to be there, end of frickin' story. That means that you neglected your own husband because you never came back home to cook for him.
How could you say that?
Take a look at me. I'm a full-time employee, and I even have a title. I have a whole different sense of responsibility. Now, let's take a look at you. In your case, I don't even know if I'd call it a job.
You don't have to say it that way. You make it sound like my existence is meaningless.
Aren't you forgetting something?
What?
We made a deal. If you didn't do the housework to my satisfaction, I'm gonna have to tell you to stop working that stupid job of yours.
I know. I'll make dinner now, so wait a bit, okay?
Of course you're gonna cook dinner, damn it. I didn't have frickin' lunch today, so you better make it something respectable.
All right. Was my husband making fun of my part-time job? I was beginning to think he was. I couldn't help but hate him for that little demonstration of inexcusable behavior. And not too long after that, my hard work at my part-time job paid off, and I eventually became in charge of the store itself. I'm motivated because I'm also in charge of making the shifts for everyone working at the supermarket. But even if I told my husband that, he'd still tell me that I'm only a part-timer, nothing at all like the full-time work he does every single day. He looks down on me. He condescends to me, even though we are husband and wife. I slowly became worried he didn't know what love was anymore. He never showed that part of himself leading up to when we got married. That's why I decided to marry him. He seemed a respectable person, but now, of all times, I can understand why some of my old colleagues were against it. Every day after that, Derek came home frustrated. Although my own life was awesome, seeing him like that was not a very pleasant thing to see, and it eventually became a bit of a disappointment whenever I had to go home. One day, I got a call from the aforementioned colleague who came up with Derek's nickname. By the way, this colleague was there when I was still working for that company, and she had always been a good friend of ours. She asked me if I could spare a few minutes because she had something she wanted to talk about. I had an upcoming day off from my part-time job, and we decided to have lunch together. Hey, how's Derek these days? Is it all right at home? Same old, his usual self. I think I told you this before, but I guess he's kind of a tight-ass husband. Yeah, I guess he is. You started a part-time job, didn't you? Yeah, I did. How do you know about that? Derek's been making fun of your part-time job to his juniors and colleagues. He says you claim you're working a job when you're really not, and that you can't even do the housework properly. He even goes so far as to say you're not a good housewife, and that's not the worst part. He says that's all fine and dandy with him, but being married to someone like that will never allow him the opportunity to get ahead in life. What the hell is his problem? He's always been like that. You know that more than anyone. Nowadays, people in general don't take a liking to folks like that anymore. That's true. That's why he's become pretty isolated in the office. Everyone in the office knows full well how much of a good job you've done as a housewife, and they damn well believe you're excelling at your new part-time job. That's so sweet of you. Thank you so much. But if he keeps at it like that, his isolation in the company is going to become all the more complete. I was sure my colleague was telling me all of this for my husband's sake. I really appreciate it, Carrie. I had a hunch he was making fun of me behind my back, sometime, somewhere, but I never assumed he would want to bother his colleagues at work with nonsense like this. It's not something to talk about with them in the workplace. My husband's short fuse was the sole cause for his becoming increasingly isolated at the office. I didn't want him to cause any more trouble to anyone. That led me to a decision. When my husband would come home that night, I was going to talk to him, ask him if he really did do these things, and confirm it's the truth. Hey, so I just happened to overhear today you're talking smack about me behind my back. Is it true?
And so what if it's true?
I don't think it's good for anyone to hear their boss complain about their family all the time. I don't want to make other people uncomfortable and worried, you see. I think it's better not to say too much.
Looky who's talking. Little Miss Goody Two-Shoes Know-It-All. What the hell would you know about what my job's like? You just want to tell me that I keep on talking shit about you. You'll lose your position at your job. That's all you want. You're so frickin' selfish.
I'm not worried about me. Talk shit about me all you want. I don't care. I just think there are people out there who would rather not hear about that load of negativity. I only think you shouldn't bother them anymore.
Holy shit, you've become so cocky since you started working that slave labor, huh? You started working part-time. So what? Doesn't prove a goddamn thing. You know what? Frick you and your precious existence.
Derek suddenly stood up and brushed everything that was on the table on the floor. And then he proceeded to kick the table, smash the chairs, and wreak havoc inside the house. When I saw the way he handled my suggestions, I quickly felt a great sense of fear. I realized that upsetting him would lead to drastic consequences. I started a new life, a life in fear of my own husband, every single day. Perhaps such a life tired me out quite substantially. I began to feel a little under the weather. Even at work, I got headaches if I stayed standing for too long, leading me to need to sit down. And one day, because of such a life, I collapsed during work. I was rushed to the hospital via ambulance, and according to the doctors, it was because I was overworked. They told me I had both physical and mental stress, and asked if I had any idea what could be the cause of this stress. I was certain it was all because of my husband, but for some reason, I couldn't say so. I just told them that maybe I was just tired from work, and then I laid down on the hospital bed and drifted off to sleep. Evening fell, and I woke up to find Derek waiting beside the bed. I'm sorry, honey. I'm not feeling well.
We're going home, now.
Doctors told me to rest at the hospital today.
You sick or something?
No, I'm just overworked.
We're going home. Freaking part-timer. So damn funny. Overworked in a part-time job. That's hilarious.
It's not... Anyway, I'm gonna stay in the hospital today. Take care of the house for me, okay?
But that's not what you promised me. You promised to take care of the house and your stupid job. That was the deal.
But take a good look at my situation. Do you really think that's possible today? I'm sorry, honey, but it's not possible. That's what I told him, and he never spoke another word. He just rose, strode over to the door, and closed it with a deliberately loud slam. It was a big room, but since I was the only one there that day, I was glad no one saw that. But it's times like this that render me so embarrassed. The fact he really can't see anything or anyone around himself, it's downright shameful. That day, I was admitted to the hospital and was discharged the next. When I returned home, I found divorce papers on the table, with my husband's section already filled out. I took one look at the divorce documents, and a tsunami of release washed over me. I could finally leave that wretched fiend, and then I got a call from him.
Seen the table yet? You don't want to get divorced now, do you?
I do, actually. Let's get a divorce.
What are you talking about, part-timer? You think you can support yourself financially with that job of yours? You wouldn't know what to do without me. A stupid part-timer like you can't possibly even make a living at all. You'd be on your own, and what exactly do you expect to do if you go through with this? Just what I thought. Nothing. You're so stupid it's actually, well, adorable. My darling, I can imagine you on your knees, begging for my forgiveness. I'm looking forward to coming home tonight, darling. I'll tell you that much.
That's my husband for you. And he was chastising me to the point of no return. I signed the divorce documents he prepared for me with a smile on my face, and then I packed all my belongings into a carry-on suitcase and left the house. Evening fell, and I got another call from my now ex-husband.
Hey, your stuff's not here, and the divorce papers are gone too. What the hell are you playing at?
I told you I wanted to get a divorce, didn't I? As soon as I heard from you, I enthusiastically signed the divorce documents and submitted them to City Hall. You laid everything out so perfectly for me. Thanks to you, the submission was accepted without any problems. Thank you.
What the frick are you talking about? You don't want to divorce me. Your life's only going to get miserable and poor.
You've got it all wrong, my dear. Such a life will never happen. Not by a long shot.
You really think you can live on your own just by working part-time? You really don't know anything about society, and you underestimate it so much it's disgusting.
It's not a part-time anymore.
Yeah. You mean you quit your job? Then you're even more of a frickin' joke.
I'm going full-time.
What?
Actually, even before I fell ill, there was a talk of me getting a full-time job. Because of my age, and since you can't change that nor defy it, I was hired as a senior. But I was given the position of area manager at headquarters. Our old area manager was retiring from the company, so I was officially recognized as their successor. In our area, the store managers were often around my age, and the people who worked in these places were also of a relatively older age. Coupled with the fact that I would know how they feel about the workplace and the contents of their work, it could also be considered great motivation for women who had been housewives for a better part of their lives. I was too, after all, and hard work and persistence paid off. Above all else, they told me I deserved the position because I was just good at my job. It was a speedy rise to the top. Originally, when I was still working for the same company as Derek, there was talk of me becoming section chief. Then, my husband found out about it and told me to quit the company. His pride wouldn't allow his wife to be a higher position than him. I told my children about it too. Headquarters were actually where Sky lives, so it was pretty convenient to be honest.
So the bugger knows about it all too, doesn't he?
Don't you dare talk shit about my son. Sky was the one who suggested we get divorced, and Jared provided me with much needed mental support. Both are very happy with the decision. Sky was actually going to let me stay at his place, and that's what I've been prepping to do. And lo and behold, you left the divorce documents at exactly the right time. I'm so grateful to you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Don't frick with me. You were contracted to do my chores.
Contracted? My dear, I believe I hear a screw getting loose in that noggin of yours. What are you talking about? We were a married couple, and we were supposed to be on equal footing. You always look down on people, but you're the one whom people look down on because of their hatred for what you do.
What the frick is the matter with you? You're really pissing me the frick off.
I took this opportunity to spill everything I've been feeling up until then. I talked to someone at your company. They graciously told me you're really not good at your simple job, and that's precisely why you can never become more than a mere section chief. Some even wonder why you have that position at all. They were sure they must have given you some kind of position only because of your age.
You bitch.
And yet, you can still talk shit about all kinds of people. You're a laughingstock. You don't know anything about yourself, do you? I can't be around people like you anymore. By all means, spend the rest of your life blaming everyone else for your mistakes. See if I give a good goddamn.
You got to be kidding me. What am I supposed to do now?
I ignored my husband's yelling, and I hung up the phone. He then called me again and again, but I ignored him completely. And then, he told everyone at work that he divorced me. The truth was that I divorced him, but let's be honest, he's always right about everything. And indeed, he made it sound like it was all my fault. His colleagues thought it was impossible that I would do such a thing, and they didn't listen to my husband's story whatsoever. Because of that, Derek completely fell out of favor at work. Perhaps he finally realized what was happening, because since then, he wasn't able to wield as much power as he used to, and his superiors found out he couldn't do his job properly. He couldn't even land a contract with a potential business partner, and his demotion became official soon thereafter. I guess the nickname Eternal Section Chief fell off deaf ears, as he was no longer a manager of the year. He had to hand over the job to an employee younger than my second-born son. Of course, Derek's pride would have none of this bullshit, and he left the company voluntarily. At the age of 58, it was difficult to find a new job. If you could do the work well at your old job, then I don't think you would have a hard time. But when it came to Derek, who was merely a section chief for more years than one could care to admit, he just couldn't find a job. No one wanted to hire a man near retirement whose greatest accomplishment was successfully creating a table of a week's sales on Microsoft Excel. So, as of now, he's actually working part-time, which he used to make fun of. Oh, the irony makes it all so hilarious. I do hope he's finally learned what happens when you make fun of people, never try to acknowledge your own faults, and never endeavor to make any changes to any of those faults. Both Jared and Sky told me that they once got a call from their father, asking for support, but they told me they'd fought him off, and after that, they never heard from him again. As for me, I joined headquarters as an officially recognized full-time employee. I didn't think I'd have a full-time job at my age, so I will admit I'm a bit discombobulated. I do know one thing. I will do my absolute best for the company. My sons are also supporting me, and using that as my motivation. My next goal is to become a super senior employee, and make supermarkets a place to satisfy customers, as well as improve the lives of those who work for them. Wish me luck.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.